and today I am going to talk to you about The Bone Maker by Sarah Beth Durst. This is a new adult fantasy standalone that I was able to read on NetGalley a little bit early, and I absolutely loved it. This was so good, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it, and this is all going to be spoiler free. So I really hope you watch this and enjoy it and then pre-order this book because it is so good. And if you are interested in pre-ordering this, the release date is March 9th. So it's coming up really quick. So I recommend go ahead and getting your orders in now. So in this book, we have a really interesting and different concept. We are following these heroes 25 years after they defeated the big bad. We're following them just kind of in their daily life. We started out following just one, and that is Kreia, who was the fearless leader. And we kind of see that she has like turned into this hermit, this person that she's not around society. She doesn't like go out. And they're very well known, these heroes, right? So they're very well known. There's ballads being sung about them, like everybody knows them. And she lives this very solitary, just confined life. And that is because her husband, who was also one of the 5 heroes, was killed that 25 years ago in that final battle. And she is basically trying to find a way to bring him back, right? Because in this world there are 3 different kinds of magic and they all revolve around bones. We have a bone wizard, which is like one of our main characters, Sarah, who is one of the 5. And a bone wizard can make talismans out of animal bones. They carve like inscriptions into them and they can give you strength or speed or stealth or stability. And they get used up after you like say the word and then you activate it and you use it and they eventually use themselves up, right? But that is what a bone wizard does. And then we have a bone reader who is like our one hero, Marso. And they are basically seers. They can toss the bones and then read them and see past, present, and future, right? And that is another kind of the magic. And then we have the bone makers, which is what Kreia is, and it's also what our big bad was. And bone makers can basically make what they call constructs. They can use bones, carve something into them, and like create a not sentient but living being or something mechanical. Like Kreia creates these like rag dolls with animal bones that are like functioning and they do a task, if that makes sense. And like at one point she activates like what they call a crawler, which is kind of like a car type thing with bones, different animal bones. So that's kind of like the magic system, and I really liked that there's like 3 different ways to use the same magic, because that just was really cool to see. It definitely gave me Bone Shard Daughter vibes, because with the constructs and like the bone magic, that's really prevalent in Bone Shard Daughter, which was one of my favorite arcs that I read last year. And I was excited to see that kind of used again in a much different way. And I really appreciated that, because like we don't see anything like bone magic very often in fantasy. But this book also gave me Kings of the Wild vibe, because we're following these older protagonists. They've got to be at least like 45 years old, because they saved the world 25 years ago when they were young. And now, you know, they're older, and it gives me a lot of Kings of the Wild vibes without being comical. But that whole like getting the band back together like for one last tour that Kings of the Wild has, that it gives me that in a non comical way. And I appreciated that so much. Like, that was probably one of my favorite aspects of this book. So we follow, starting out, we follow Kreia as she's trying to save her husband, and that's kind of the catalyst that sets everything in motion. She ends up going to her old friend Sarah, who is one of the other like heroes, and Sarah has done super well for herself. She's the bone wizard, she's making talismans, she's selling them, she's very well known, she's kind of reveled in her fame, and she's very angry to see Kreia because like she up and left 25 years ago after this battle and ain't never talked to nobody. So she goes to her for help, and that's kind of the catalyst that sets off this entire story, right? They have to kind of go back to this place that the battle took place, and they're trying to resurrect Gent, who is her husband, and to do so they need taboo magic. They need human bones, which is something that the big bad did, and that is why he was considered bad. That is why he ended up being like a mass murderer and genocide. She's just using the bones of people that are already dead. But this book does a lot of exploring where that line is, right? Like, okay, she's kind of doing the same thing, just not murdering people, but she's performing the same illegal magic. So where's that line? Murder is the line, obviously, but like, how different is she than our actual like big bad that they had to fight 25 years ago? Also, we come to find out in our journey that this big bad that they killed might not be as dead as they think he is. And we just get to see so much of them, like I said, getting the band back together, trying to figure this out, this like overarching like mystery that's going on past saving her 25-year dead husband. And we get to just see these characters. And I feel like this book is very, very character driven. There's definitely action, there's definitely plot, there's definitely an overarching mystery, but I feel like the characters are what made this book for me. They are what spoke to me, and they were just so good. So we follow Kreia with Zara, and then they kind of get the band back together with Marso as well as Strand, who was kind of their like big burly warrior dude, right? Like he didn't have like magic, but he was their big burly warrior dude, and Zara would feed him like strength talismans. But he is now married with children, so I love that they added that in, because we also get his wife, and she's just a little spitfire. Like, she's much younger than them, but man, she is just this powerhouse spitfire, ain't gonna take no shit mama, and I absolutely loved her. Like, she is a side character, but she is definitely one of my badass moms, and I appreciate her for that. One of the things that I really enjoyed that we explored was the PTSD and the trauma that these characters experienced during their first saving of the world, because I feel like that's not something we explore a whole lot in like these kind of fantasy books, right? A lot of times it's just like the kids save the world, the big bad is dead, and the book is over. This, taking place so many years after, really gets to explore like what a person's character would do in those circumstances, with everything they saw, all the death and destruction, and having that weight on your shoulders, but then also being like known by everyone and having ballads sung about you. And it's really cool because every single one of the heroes experienced something slightly different. They handled it differently, they handled their trauma differently, and it's really cool to see all the different ways that they handled it. Like, did they go crazy? Did they revel in it and find success? Did they become a hermit? Did they just kind of like move out to a farm and get married and have kids? Like, but all of them kind of share in this trauma, and they're very trauma bonded. And they all kind of have some similarities with like nightmares and things along those lines. And it's just really cool to see that really deep character exploration of trauma 25 years after an event. Another thing that I absolutely loved was the friendships shown between this group of heroes. It has been 25 years basically since any of them had seen each other, and they just kind of pick up where they left off. Like, yeah, there's some animosity towards Kreia and her just bouncing on out, but they pick up where they left off. They just slide back into their roles as heroes. Kreia slides back into her role as commander, and, you know, everyone looks to her even 25 years later after she's abandoned them all. They still see her as their commander. They still see each other as this group of friends and important people in their lives, and they know that they are the only people that have gone through this and can really be bonded together because of it. So they just slip right back on in. And I love friendships like that. Like, have you ever had that friend where it's like you haven't talked to each other in years and years and years, and then like you see each other and it's like you don't miss a beat, like nothing ever happened? Like, I have friends like that. I do. I have a few friends like that where we could just not talk forever, and it's happened. Like, just shit got busy. We didn't talk. We hadn't seen each other in years, and then boom, right back to where we started. Nothing, like nothing ever changed. And I love seeing that depicted. The other thing that I absolutely loved was that I ended up kind of empathizing with the villain. And I'm pretty sure if you read this, you will too, because there's these points of where's the line, like I mentioned. Like, okay, illegal magic, human bones, murder. Like, where is your line? Because some people have different moral compasses. And when you kind of start to see why the big bad did what he did and his actual motivations and like the true story behind it, you kind of feel something for him. You kind of are like, oh, well, what would I do in that situation? And our heroes even question that. Kreia even questions that. Like, well, what would I have done? What did I do different? What did I do that's the same as him? Because I'm doing things that are very similar to what he did. So what does that make me? Does that make me bad as well? Does that make me evil? But no, I'm the hero. I'm one of the 5 heroes of Voss. Like, I can't be evil, but am I? Like, it's this whole like moral compass, morally gray conundrum that I appreciated so much. And I love when I can empathize with a villain, right? Like, I love that. I might not agree with them or what they're doing, but I can see why they're doing it and it makes sense. Like, I love that. That is my favorite kind of villain in a story, where they're not evil for the sake of being evil. They have this really good motivation, like this thing that they really want. And it's like one instance like turned them onto the path that they shouldn't have gone down. Like, they could have gone one way, but they went left. Like, they just did. And you can see why, and you can feel bad for them, but still not agree with what they're doing. The ending of this book was great. Like I said, this is a standalone, which is pretty rare in fantasy books, and I really appreciated the ending. It wasn't this like big ruckus thing. It was a very quiet, beautiful, peaceful ending, and I thought it was perfect for the heroes. It was perfect the way it played out. Like, I appreciated everything about how this story ended and the paths that everybody ended up taking, the consequences and things that ended up happening, and the consequences that everybody kind of had to accept after the events of the book, because there was definitely some sacrifices and things that just, they were done and they had to be done in the moment, and you gotta deal with it. And I just loved this book. This is one that I can definitely see myself rereading, and this is also one where I really want a prequel. Like, I don't want a sequel. I want a prequel. I want the young heroes saving the world book. And then I want to go back and read this one too. Like, I want to know that story because, like, you kind of get that story. But I feel like there's so much more to what happened 25 years ago that I want to know that as well. So Sarah Beth Durst, if you're watching, can you write that for me? I'd really like that because this was fantastic. Probably one of my new favorite books of the year. Like, I'm going to be ordering a physical copy to have to reread, to tab, because this was just beautiful. I love older protagonists and getting the band back together and exploring what happens after the actual, like, climax. So I just loved it. And I think if you like Kings of the Wild or Bone Shard Daughter, you will really enjoy this book. I think it is definitely worth picking up. It's one that I highly recommend. And I'm very glad that NetGalley approved me for this arc. Let's just say that. All right, well, that was all my thoughts on the Bone Maker. Let me know what you think if you plan on picking this up, because I want to talk to someone about it. And there's like no one that I know that has read it or plans to read it. And I want to know. I want to talk to people about this book. All right, well, I'm Jessie. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time. Bye.